Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's podcast. Today I'll be speaking with Mr. John Kirk. And Kirky's been around for a while.
Bit too long, but yeah.
Kirky's had quite a long and successful career. He's a bass player, amongst other things. And so let's get into it.
I think I ride a couple of racehorses. There's a couple of other things. Not much.
Where did you start out playing music?
Yes, I've answered this many a time, Scotty, I can tell you. So this is one of the stories I do remember, obviously. But back in school, and in high school, we're talking about now, secondary school, so I started fairly late, really, as a middle teenager.
Yep.
And was heavily into sport, all that sort of thing, as you are in school. You'd had a footy team, you'd be training, and you'd come back into class, you'd still have your footy boots on. You know, we had a lot of privileges as the sports stars of the school. So we had a crowd. Even when we trained, there'd be a crowd around the place. All of a sudden, Scotty, the crowd disappeared. So we'd be out there training and ambling. Well, where's all the chicks gone? You know, so there's a band playing in the General Assembly area every frickin' lunchtime. So I walked over, here's this band playing, and everybody was there. And I thought, shit. So I walked up to the band and I said, I want to join the band. And they said, oh, what can you play? I said, what do you need? And they said, a bass player. So that's what I did. I went and bought a guitar that night.
Wow.
And 2 weeks later I was playing with them. Now that sounds a bit strange, but, and I have obviously been a teacher of bass through the years, and I honestly believe that you've either got it or you haven't. I think that you can try to teach somebody forever, and if they don't have it, they don't. And I think I've been just one of those fortunate ones that was able to buy a record and learn it.
Okay.
Incredible.
So did you ever have any formal lessons?
I did. I had 2 lessons. It was an Italian fellow who played double bass.
Okay.
So I ended up buying a fretless bass for that reason, just so I could understand what he was talking about.
Oh, okay.
And so I did. I started very early on a fretless bass, and just got sick of him because he wouldn't teach me songs. So that was it. I didn't go back and didn't need to, as it turned out.
So he was trying to teach you theoretical stuff?
Just the way, technique. He was a double bass player. So just as an example, instead of playing a string like that, he would play it like that. So when you're teaching someone that doesn't know how to play, obviously you adapt immediately what you're being taught, and I found it hard on a fretted instrument. So I found it a lot better on a fretless. So I quickly ditched him for that reason, because the records and the songs I wanted to play didn't involve a fretless at the time. So I did it myself.
Yeah.
I bought Made in Japan.
By Deep Purple?
In 1972, I can tell you.
Wow.
I went and saw Led Zeppelin at Cuban. It was the very first concert I'd ever been to, and it was pissing down rain, and I didn't give a shit. I was just out there in the mosh pit.
How old were you at that particular point?
I would have been about 13.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
so 13. That would have been amazing. Like, that would have been a life-changing experience.
Oh, absolutely. I was just, from that moment on, that was it. Had the little bass for a couple of weeks, joined that little band. We didn't have a clue what we were playing. Some of the stuff was just open string things, and because nobody could really play very well. It didn't seem to matter, because kids just wanted to hear music.
It's fun.
And they knew everybody in the band, and there was a real connection there, I think, with what's happening even today and what happened in the 80s.
Yeah.
So that I certainly remember, and that's what got me into it. And I loved it straight away.
Wow. So, and like say 2 weeks, and you were basically performing straight up front in the school at lunchtimes?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
Every day.
So was that a common thing so that was in Melbourne?
It was in Melbourne. It started to be, I think we were one of the first schools to do it. And then all of a sudden, a lot of other schools started doing it, and bands were then going to other schools and performing. And it was, and even getting together and performing. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And you could see how, in the very early 70s, how the 80s became what it did, especially down south.
Yeah.
And I suppose right around the country. But
at this particular point in time when you were doing that, was Countdown a thing on TV at that particular point?
No.
Hadn't started yet?
Not yet. It wasn't too far behind. It's probably a few years before Skyhooks. There you go. And then Skyhawks really hit the town, and that's really when Countdown took off, I think. I know you had the Sherbets and you had all that, but I think that mid-70s when Skyhawks sort of hit the scene, Australia just was all of a sudden on a map to Australians.
Yeah, because there was
instead of buying international stuff.
Well, yeah. There was a lot of... there was quite a few famous festivals, well, particularly down in Victoria, like the Sunbury Festival and...
Magnificent.
Did you manage to go to any of those type of things?
I did, yeah, I did go to... I wasn't part of any of them. I did go to Sunbury and I saw Deep Purple, actually. And the funny thing was, just before them, and again it was pissing down rain. It's the funny thing about Melbourne and Victoria. But I remember seeing Deep Purple, and I mean, just incredible. That was probably David Coverdale, Glenn Hughes...
Okay,
it was that era, the Burn sort of era of Purple, yeah. That was great to see. I remember he used a fire hydrant, Richie Blackmore, grabbed a fire hydrant, and was just playing crap when the mic stand broke. It was just grabbed the fire. Anyway, it was pissing down rain, but it was, those festivals were incredible. Did you ever attend one?
No, that was a little bit before my time. I grew up in northern New South Wales, and for me, that was a world away.
After Sunbury, they really did resurrect quite a lot of that sort of thing, not necessarily 3-day festivals, but they would do Calder Park Raceway and they'd have Fleetwood Mac and Little River Band and Kevin Borich Express and these were just events that happened every bloody week.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
That would have been an amazing thing to see. Just a quick interruption to say thank you for watching the podcast. Please hit the subscribe button. It's very early days for us and we're trying to grow things. And you can help. Please share, hit the subscribe button. It makes a massive difference. Thank you very much. So, out of school, you're playing with your school friends, and what happened for you
I got lucky
to get into playing music professionally?
I got very lucky as a late teenager where I met some pretty influential people that helped me along the way a bit. And I don't know whether there was a shortage of bass players, but there was a few of us. There was Roger McLaughlin, there was Paul Christie, and we did a lot of session stuff. And I was probably 17. And the reason I got the gigs back in those days, I think they paid whatever they did an hour, and it was all about how quick you could do it, because that's how much it cost. So I ended up getting quite a lot of it, and you had to be on call. Mm-hmm. So you would get a call, and I'm sure Paul Christie probably got the first phone call at 3 a.m, and he'd tell them to piss off, and I think Roger probably did the same thing, and Kirky would jump in the car and go to South Melbourne and then do it. You know? And it was funny because you'd walk in 3 a.m. in the studio and here's Juno Roxas over there, and they're recording their album, and then you've got Australian Crawl doing Reckless in another studio. And it's just in the middle of the night, and just the sort of scene it was. So I was fortunate to be involved in all of that. And at a very early age, and I met a fella called Johnson Peters, who was a bit of a, what was that show? New Faces, Bert Newton's New Faces. Oh, yeah. I think that's where he originated from, was a squeezebox player. But he became quite a little girl pop star, and so we did Countdown in those days too, in the Johnson Peters band, and we recorded, of course, and we did the theme to Simon Townsend's Wonderworld.
Oh,
and,
wow.
you know, all those sorts of things, which ended up being hit songs.
Yeah.
Crazy enough. So I was exposed to all that pretty early, and then keyboard players developed a way of putting bass players out of business in session work.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. All of a sudden we didn't need a bass player.
So this would have been, what, 80s?
Yeah, yep.
Was this before even drum machines or after drum machines?
Probably the same time.
Around the same time?
Yeah,
so drummers and bass players. So, because there's always...
Yeah.
It's very well known that drummers didn't get replaced, but...
It's probably when DJs started getting #1 records and things like that, around that time.
Okay.
It was happening big time in America. But like anything, it was just a cost-saving venture here. And we became...
less people to pay.
We became obsolete all of a sudden, as session players, yeah.
Wow.
Which was interesting.
Yeah.
It never ever affected records, but it certainly affected ads and all that sort of thing, which was the bread and butter of those days.
I did a lot of advertising stuff when I was younger. And it paid really well too.
Really, really well.
It paid really well.
Because they'd actually paid you from the moment you left your house. That's what I used to love.
Yeah.
And they really trusted you. And they just paid you well. It was just a different industry, I think, back then. It was.
if you could work quickly, because time is money, if you could deliver the goods in a short amount of time, you were worth good money.
You're on demand,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of the way it worked, pretty much.
So you've done the John St. Peter's thing, and then the session work's starting to dry up. What
Right.
decisions do you make from there to
Well, I got a phone call from Uncanny X-Men's manager, and they were about to go to, I think it was another one of those festivals, Narara.
So they were already a happening entity.
They were a happening entity and had just got a record deal. So that was just signed by Michael Gudinski and Mushroom. And they had gone in to record, and they ended up recording a live EP in a studio as their first recording. And then they wanted to replace the bass player and the drummer in the band. So bass player was first. I came into the band. We recorded 2 singles, and then we replaced the drummer. And then became the final lineup when we went in and did our first album.
Okay.
But yeah, and then things took off very, very quickly. With the Uncanny X-Men, I know it wasn't overnight. They were always a big live band, but also
Was the
records.
first single Everybody Wants to...
No, the first single was actually a song written by Greg McCainch.
Okay,
And
from
it was
Skyhooks.
Yeah, and it was a song called How Do You Get Your Kicks.
I remember that one.
That was actually our first, and that was with the other drummer. It was still on.
You get your kicks, yeah.
It was actually our first ever single. It was never on any of the albums.
Oh.
And our second single wasn't on any of the albums either. It was a song called Time Goes So Fast. And again, that wasn't on anything. And then our first big single was Everybody Wants to Work, which was part of an EP, but we did stick that song on the album.
Ah, okay.
So, yeah. But back in those days, you would record, 4-track EPs. And they were great. Really, really good return from that sort of thing. And more so than albums, I thought. We did a lot of that.
So when you joined the band, were you a full member or a...
That's a longer story, but I think at first I was filling in. So they needed a bass player for
So you were acting more like a hired gun?
Pretty much. In after the first couple of weeks, they asked me to stay, and would you stay? So I did.
Was that a gentleman's agreement, or was there any sort of written contract?
Gentleman's agreement. And as you know, in bands, I think they got rid of the manager a month later, the bloke that actually found me, and things went very quickly for the X-Men after that. Mm-hmm. And it was just timing, It was...
From a business point of view, it's quite a big thing to manage success like that. They had new management?
Mm-hmm. Which ended up being our sound engineer.
Oh.
We were all very close anyway, so it was the easiest of transitions.
Here's your sound engineer. Did he have any experience in management before then?
No, not really, but he quickly learned it. He ended up having geisha in his stable as well as us.
Oh, okay,
so he took a few on. There were some others, I can't think of them offhand, but there was a few.
With signing, was the deal signed with the record company before you joined the band?
Yes. Yeah,
so that was a done deal before you joined?
It was. That's one thing I had to do, though. I had to sign on a dotted line like they had.
Did you have legal advice before you did that?
Nope.
No?
You were young, 18 and stupid, Scott. The stupidness didn't end there with the contract stuff, I can tell you. It got worse after that.
Is that something that if you had your time over again, you would do differently?
Oh, definitely. It's incredible just what if you knew what you know now back then, you wouldn't make a mistake, in all honesty. That's why we're the best people to speak to for advice.
So what about that decision was a mistake in your mind? Was there the possibility of negotiating the contract, or was it a case of, well, you've got no choice, that's what's on the table, and either you're in or you're out?
I think back in those days, musicians had a lot of power, much more power than anything today. We were able to overrule anything.
Okay, so you could negotiate
We'd tell the record company what we wanted to do. We'd do what we ever wanted to do in film clips. We did whatever we wanted to do in interviews. We sort of ignored all advice, if you like. We just did what we wanted to do. Another example, I'll just bring this one in just while we're talking about stupidity, Scotty.
Okay.
So we did a tour, it was 1982, so again it was early, it could have been 83. And it was before the hype of the X-Men, and we toured with Rod Stewart around Australia. And That was fantastic, obviously, because you're playing in the big arenas, and I think we were on for 45 minutes before he played. And we never ever met him on the whole tour. He would always stay at a different hotel. The band would be with us wherever we stayed, but Rod, I don't know, he'd have 2 different blondes every night in his limo when he'd be off. And it wasn't until the last gig, and it was at the Memorial, it was Adelaide, the tennis place, Memorial Drive or Memorial, whatever they call it, it's open air.
Yep.
Thing, and they had tents up full band rooms and everything. We did our little 45 minutes. It was the last show of the tour. We came in there, doing our high fives as we're walking back into the tent, and his Rod was in the tent. First, the last show, and just thanked us for the whole tour and everything. Anyway, cut a long story short, after that, they asked us to come back to the States with them to continue the tour. And we went, well, wow, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay, problem. You've got to change your name, because our name belongs to a Marvel comic.
Oh, that's true.
So, or DC or one of, anyway, what I mean. It's Uncanny X-Men. I think it's now just the X-Men, the Matrix series, all that sort of.
Yeah.
We're not changing our name. You said, well, you got it. You just changed it a bit, the Sherbs have done it, blah, 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 blah. No, we're not changing our name.
The Flowers did it.
I think even the Angels did it. Became Angel City or something, added another word.
In the US?
Anyway, we didn't want to, so guess what? We didn't go. If that's not stupidity, then I don't know what is, but that was a decision that we all made. We all agreed we don't need America. That's what teenagers do, I guess. And they can't be told otherwise. As we've all had kids.
So I guess that's something you would probably do differently now.
Oh, definitely, but you just need someone that can give you that advice. I don't think anyone was capable in their own mind to do the right thing.
Yeah.
We just needed somebody that knew.
You were talking about your ability to take advice, or there was no one to give advice. Do you think that if there had been someone to give advice, you would have taken it anyway?
No, I really don't, Scotty, which is the worst thing of it all. Yeah, I don't think so, no. Was
there, I'd imagine, a lot of strong-willed people in the band?
Mm-hmm. I think all bands were a bit like that in the 80s.
Would you call that strong-willed, or would you say it was ego?
Ego.
Ego?
Yeah, definitely ego. Definitely.
Wow.
It was massive. The competitiveness was worse than 2 football teams back in those days.
Yeah.
Bands didn't really like each other. They were competitive. Like an example was, and one thing that really sticks in my mind, and you're probably going to ask a question about this anyway, so I'm going to jump the gun. But I remember the Countdown Music Awards, and they were at the Entertainment Centre in Melbourne. Molly was hosting, and we were nominated for Best Band. I think Brian was nominated for Best Male Singer or something, and In Excess were also nominated for everything in those categories. And we had a massive fan base. They used to call themselves the X-Maniacs. And just from memory, I think we had a 13,000 letter output thing, because there was no emails or anything in those days, or fair could post. And anyway, In Excess had won the Best Band, and the whole crowd booed. I don't know if you even remember that on tally, but
no, I don't remember
that. Just, I hope, exemplifies what I'm trying to say about.
So you had a lot of fans in the audience?
Wow, yes, certainly, but there was animosity, massive animosity.
Oh.
Massive. Things we just weren't friends. It was strange. It's different today.
Yeah.
But it was just very competitive in those days, and we wanted to make a better record than they did, or sell more than they did, and geez, didn't that change over the years though? It certainly rocketed to the top. But that's sort of way it was back in those days, It was strange.
Okay, so what year was it that you joined Uncanny X-Men?
82.
82. Yeah.
82, and I left in end of 87, so it wasn't a big, long stint.
So when you left in 87, did Uncanny X-Men continue on?
Only for about a year. I think they went on for about another year and disbanded, and I think the very next get-together wasn't until the very late 90s. Or it was about the time of the Mushroom 25th anniversary concert, which was at the MCG. It was the first time we'd got together since the late 80s. Yeah, it could have been mid-90s or late to mid-90s. There was 100,000 people there.
Wow.
It was incredible.
I know that you've done some songwriting.
A lot, actually.
How much songwriting did you get in with Uncanny X-Men?
None.
None?
B-sides, every one of them.
So, but you did write songs with Uncanny X-Men, you just didn't get any singles?
Pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much?
Yep, pretty
Okay.
much. And I didn't pursue it because I couldn't write their type of music, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
This probably gets a bit deeper now, but they weren't my kind of band.
Okay.
You know, I liked them, but they weren't my style of music, if you like, originally.
Originally?
Initially.
Initially. Okay. So you talked about seeing Deep Purple when you were young and then Led Zeppelin when you were young. What were you into? What sort of stuff?
I was into pretty much everything, but not punk.
Okay, so Uncanny X-Men were like...
I think that, to me, they were a punk band.
Oh.
I thought they were a punk rock band, you know.
Yep.
I don't think they were in the end. They were pretty pop, really.
Yeah, they were.
But when I first saw them and they did the send-ups of people and Brian would wear this strapped-on dick on his head and be running around, I just thought they've got to be, you know...
Comedy rock.
Yeah, I just didn't quite get the whole thing. So even when they were writing stuff and Best Looking Guy in the Factory and all these sorts of songs that Brian would write, I couldn't write stuff like that. And Chuck would write...
They're really great. I mean, lyrically, it's interesting. It's not the standard run-of-the-mill stuff.
And that's
it's very unique.
That's what I struggled with. The lyrics of it all, something I couldn't write, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not me. I'd write... My other problem with writing, especially with lyrics, is I write a lot of love stories. They end up becoming love stories for some reason. Okay. That's why I got into country. I enjoyed that for a while. The dog died, you know.
So around 87, you finish up with Uncanny X-Men. What happens next for you?
Just trying to think now. I got into some heavy metal bands and enjoyed that for a little while. And then in 94... I sort of got involved with ABC Music and the Tamworth thing and did the whole country thing for about 3 or 4 years and just really enjoyed all that. And I thought that was actually the next possible chance at that stage, which was 90s, of doing something new or something a bit different. I thought country was probably still an area that hadn't been tapped in Australia. Mm-hmm. As it turned out, I don't think it's ever going to be tapped in Australia. It's just not the same. As it is in America. It's nothing like Nashville over here, really nothing.
Well, Australian country, I think, in some ways is becoming Americanised, which is a shame.
It is.
Because it did have a unique voice. I think there's still a unique voice there, but it's...
It's never going to be American country rock. And I think originally it was sort of Slim and probably John Williamson, but to me they were more storyteller, folk.
Yeah, I guess folk would be a better... description.
Almost Paul Kelly-ish, you know, you can nearly put him in that category, except that it didn't have a pedal steel guitar. But, you know, I just feel that, they tried to become a bit Americanised. I know Lee and Troy Kasser did some magnificent stuff, but still didn't really crack the States. Keith sort of...
Did Lee have a go at cracking the States?
I believe so, yeah. Absolutely. I know Fiona certainly did, his sister, but... and Gina Jeffries, and quite a lot of that a crack up there. But there's only one bloke that's sort of, well, maybe a couple, but I know Keith Urban just jumped on a plane, went over there and...
He totally immersed himself in it.
He totally did, and he went and played guitar with as many people as he could.
And he's a monster guitar
player. And he's a magnificent guitar player.
Yeah. I saw him play when he was very young in a band called Rusty and the Ayers Rockettes up here on the coast and around Brisbane. And it was a great band. Like the whole band was amazing. Yeah. But he was like, and he was a teenager still then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember meeting him.
And he was a monster player.
At Tamworth, I remember meeting him. He had bleached blonde hair. And he was 17 years old. And he shouldn't have been at the bar. And I thought, there he is. But I remember meeting Brad Paisley. Brad Paisley told me that when Keith came over, he got him into his band. And he goes, and now I play for Keith's band. I thought that was...
Yeah, and he's a monster player too.
Yeah, he's
Brad
me,
Paisley. Wow. So you're playing some country stuff?
And enjoying it, and I loved it.
Did you? And were you writing?
Yes, and I really, really enjoyed it. I did a few albums. We had I think some of those bands are still going, but you know, Tamworth's only a once a year thing, so it's probably the only time they play that or Gympie or something. But I thoroughly enjoyed all of that, wrote a lot of stuff in that time, and became more disciplined as a player. I noticed playing country music, you had to be disciplined. I used to have a habit, as you do when you first start playing, overplaying everything, and you do. And I think country changed me from overplaying everything to really concentrating on what needs to be done. So it made me a better player, I thought.
Okay. Now, I've done some stuff with you in the studio, just little bits and pieces, and you do actually have quite a great knowledge, technically, of music. Where does that come from? Does that come from just experience over time?
I reckon it's listening to them. Yeah, that's just the way I started. I listened to records, so I just got to like certain bass players and listen to everything they do. And I think you just develop people like Abraham Laboriel and Chuck Ranny, anyone Steely Dan uses, for instance. Just listen to the bass and the drums through any track. And it's just a learning experience, you know, just their ideas and their shifts and where they go to. So I guess you just develop that. I would think you're the same.
I personally learnt a lot from the people that I was surrounded with, and I was very lucky to play with some amazing players, and you can't help but lift your game when you're around those sort of people.
Yeah.
It really does make you pull your finger out, and because I spent 2 years playing in a band with Phil Emanuel, and that really... And I thought I sort of was doing okay before, and then that really kicked my butt. It was a major shift. I do remember spending time and working on stuff, and I'd say, Phil, how do you play that? And Phil would be like, hey, I don't need to show you. You got it going on. You play great. Don't worry about it. It's all good. And I'm like, no, but I want to. And there was a point in time where Chris Haig was playing bass in the band. I think we did one. We did a Tamworth, played at Wesley's Club, and Chris had basically said, "It's funny." So Chris would turn around and say, "Scotty, this is how you play that bit, and this is how you." So I'm playing in a band, thinking that I'm doing all right playing guitar, and the bass player is a better guitar player than I am. Phil Emanuel's in the band, so I've got no hope there. And there was at one point there, I've got the drummer that's sitting behind me is Tommy Emanuel. So that was pretty a humbling experience. Yeah. Did the players that you played with, did they really have a big effect on what you played and how you played?
No.
So it was more about what you were listening to.
It's something I really do regret, and I don't know why, but before a big show, you know, I can give you an example. The keyboard player would go to the toilet 3 times, and or the singer would go and have a chuck or whatever, you know, and there'd be the nervousness, you know. There's thousands of people out there, and I never used to feel that way. I wish I did, you know. I wish I sort of had nerves, but just never did. So I sort of don't know why, and I still don't. And I can see people get all excited about shows, and I sort of don't.
Okay.
You know, it's just a gig.
It's just another gig. When you go back to that young lad who was at school playing in front, was there no nerves back then even?
No.
No?
No. It didn't matter. It was more about showmanship. It didn't sort of matter what you played, I thought.
Okay.
Really, it was my first impression of it was no one can play quite clearly, but they look good. And that was really...
So it was about putting on a show.
Geez, you know, the way you swing your guitar, whatever, you know, that was important. And if you got a yell out of it, well, I'll do that again. And then playing was secondary. Okay, now I better learn the song. But it became secondary. I pretty quickly became number one, but...
Oh, okay.
Originally.
When you were doing Uncanny X-Men, was there... And you were talking about them being a punk rock band. How did that affect the way you thought about playing a show?
Didn't affect it at all.
Was there any conscious discussion or thought?
I never told them I thought they were a punk rock band. It was just. I think we have now.
Was there any thought or discussion about the image that the band would portray, or?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Because I remember there was at one stage, everyone in the band wore black.
Yeah. That went on for a little while.
Was that a conscious thing?
It certainly is now. When we get together these days, we all wear black, but it wasn't conscious initially. And then when we look back at stuff, since we've got back together again and started doing some shows, when we look back, we said, we should just wear black. Forget about that polka dot shirt and forget about that. Just wear black, and that's what it's the easiest thing to do.
So from the record company's point of view, there was no direction. You were basically do what you want to do.
I think there might have been, Scotty, but I'll tell you now, win in one and out the other. Nobody absorbed anything that they told us. Not really.
Wow.
You know, and subsequently we left Mushroom after that first album. We actually pissed them off and got a better deal from CBS, and that's the other thing that was going on at that time too. You know, you were quite a wanted commodity. You know, you were making money from I reckon we built Gudinski's house.
Wow.
Yeah, that album cost 30 grand. It sold over 250,000 copies. So
wow.
That would have been a pretty good. And our contract was shit, by the way, as far as what we received out of it. But I'm sure it built him a house or two.
It's funny how the model of the industry goes now. It was a very different time back then. So the record company would have made money from the records. They didn't have any input into the live shows or any...
None.
Unlike the deals that are done today where like they call them 360 deals, where the record company gets merch, live show sale.
It never used to happen back then. It was they only had involvement in royalties from the video clips because they paid for it in the first place, and obviously the deal that you've agreed on the album. It never affected publishing, didn't affect mechanicals.
Yep.
So you still got paid royalties for playing on any record. I still do.
You still get some royalties?
Yeah, it's not as often as it used to be, but you still get the odd checks every now and then come through, a few months.
You never know. Someone might re-record a Uncanny X-Men song. Punk might come back again and...
That's all it takes, of course. Good friend of mine down in Melbourne used to play in a band called the Town Criers, who recorded a song called Everlasting Love, and shit, Bowie recorded it, Celine Dion even recorded it. Yeah, he lives in Toorak in a mansion, of course he does. But that's all it takes, you know.
So what would your recommendation be to a young teenage person starting out wanting to be a musician, getting into the music industry?
Yeah, look, I do feel for them a little bit these days as far as originals and getting your own product out there. I still believe they should and do everything they can to do it, but it's a lot harder. I think that the secret to anything is to be able to be a good player, and I think that's what's missing these days, in my opinion, with these young people. In our day, Scotty, you didn't get a record deal until you were popular, until you were actually a big band, and demanded a deal that the crowd that's going to see you now want to buy your product. So
you've gained a live following.
Yeah. If you're an original, it seems to me it's totally turned. If you're an original band these days, you don't even get a gig unless you've got a record out. Well, subsequently, that means that they can't play. You know, we would rehearse at a garage, and the whole street would come around, and you'd do it every weekend, and you'd learn how to play, and you did a lot of live stuff before you even got a record deal or got into a studio. And I think now with home studios and with the technology the way it is, I don't know if people can actually play anymore.
Yeah.
Live.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I'm sure there's a large element of what you're saying. I've had the pleasurable experience of recording and having some young guys through the studio, and some young female musicians as well. And there are some really talented young people out there. Unfortunately, they're not necessarily getting media attention, or it's very difficult, like you say, it's very difficult for them to actually get gigs because there's not the amount of gigs around that there was when we were young.
Yeah, that's
I remember when I first started playing, you could go to Coolangatta and there was half a dozen venues that had bands 6 nights a week.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of really good players because they had a lot of live experience.
Yeah. And that's what's lacking. That would be my advice to them. Play with as many people as you can. Get into cover bands, play. Go and play. By all means, do your own stuff, but play as much as you can. Get as good as you can and keep pursuing your dream, but it's not going to be as easy as it used to be. There certainly isn't the money in it unless you're touring. They're up again.
Speaking about money, was Uncanny X-Men financially good for you?
Ridiculous. We would spend money as quickly as we made it. That was our problem.
So at the end of 1987, did you walk away and with $100 in the bank?
I don't know, we made a bit more than that, but we should have made a lot more than that. And we just blew it. Like we would have. It was nothing for us to have a $60,000 end of tour party. And we'd spent 60 grand on it. Album launches, same thing. We spent money. We'd made, instead of making a film clip of a collection of videos, we went and made a movie.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that. We were just, we hire cars. We didn't go for the Kia Carnival. We'd had BMWs and they had to be midnight blue and stuff like this. We were ridiculous.
So you're living the Rockstar dream.
I know all those fans that are listening that went to those shows would know exactly what I'm talking about. They loved it. Just getting out of limos.
So I guess that was all part of the image, though.
It was. Yeah. And we'd have even a Channel 7 cameraman in with us. So when we got out come the Channel 7 cameraman as well. And it was just image,
Yeah.
It's important.
It is important. Mm. So you talked about the competitiveness amongst the bands from that era. Mm-hmm. And did you make any great friendships out of that time that you still call friends today?
All bass players. We all love each other. Gary Beers was a champion. No problems with any of that. It just seemed to be guitarists hated each other. Singers, definitely. Singers with a Spinal Tap covers it really well when the blokes walking down the wanker. That's what they were like. They were.
So for those people who might not realise, when Kirk refers to Spinal Tap, Spinal Tap was a movie that was made, was hilarious. But it was a piss take of what the music industry was like.
It was pretty good piss take, I thought.
It was very funny. I do remember hearing a story about a certain rock star going to see the movie and thinking that the movie had been made about him and walking out of the theatre.
It was nearly about every one of us, I reckon. You could just about relate to everything in there.
So, So you're still digging around quite a lot. Uncanny X-Men have just done
Queensland run,
Queensland run?
We did, yeah.
But you also play in local cover bands.
I do. I've toned it down, I've got to tell you. I mean, I was playing in 8 at one stage, and it's like, when you're playing in 8 cover bands, they don't all play the same songs. And if you average out a night in a cover band, you're probably looking at 400 songs if you're playing in 8 bands. So
it's a lot to...
And we don't have sheet music or even little notes. So you've probably got 400 odd songs running around your head. You need to be playing them constantly for them to remain there. So now I've more than half that. So I'm just toning it down a bit. Ever since COVID, I guess I've toned it right back. I'm trying to.
Trying
well,
to.
Yeah, sort of, sometimes you say yes too much, but there's a shortage of bass players. There's got to be on the Gold Coast, Queensland. There must be.
I don't think there's necessarily a shortage of bass players. There's always a demand for quality.
See, now you're starting to sound like everybody else I say this to. That's what they always say, but I honestly believe it. I get the calls. There's a shortage of bass players. If you want to learn an instrument, kids, and you live on the Gold Coast or in Queensland, go down to the store, get yourself a cheap bass guitar, buy a record, learn it, you'll be gigging before you know it.
Bass is one of those, I think it's a very underrated instrument.
Yeah,
It is a very underrated instrument.
I reckon it used to be.
There's a lot of jokes about bass players.
I don't know if they still are now. I think people have started to realise that maybe funk had a lot to do with it, but they started realising that without the bass and the drums, oops.
Particularly, the rhythm section is the heart and soul, the engine room of the band.
Yeah.
Did you ever dabble playing any other instruments, or was bass pretty much it for you?
Look, bass is the only thing I play well. I play everything, but I only play bass well. Yeah.
Okay.
And I only dabbled that because you buy a piano and you buy a drum kit and you buy a guitar and you fiddle around on it. But yeah.
So you've done the country thing, Tamworth.
Yep.
Still based out of living in Victoria?
Yep, I was still in Victoria there. I didn't come to Queensland till the end of 2000, so 2001. I've been here for 24 years. I'm still not a Queenslander, they reckon, but...
What prompted the move?
The weather.
The weather?
I had 3 very young children, 3 girls, thank you God, and I thought it would be better for them to come up here and be brought up here. So I moved the whole family up here, been here ever since. In fact, I now even regret going down to Melbourne unless it's for a show because it's just too cold.
Wow.
It's incredible, incredibly cold place. Best city in Australia, built in the wrong spot.
Did Melbourne have a very strong pub rock scene?
Absolutely, massive. Like you go to St Kilda on a Saturday night, you would have Divinals over here at the venue, I think they called it. Next is the Play Rock, or whatever it was, would be Chisel. And then you'd have the Oils on at the Wales around the corner here. I mean, that was just one night.
Yeah.
I mean, and they were all big bands playing pubs.
Yeah. How do you find using in-ear monitors with a bass guitar? Is it okay?
Perfect, yeah.
Yeah?
I prefer it much more. I'm getting deaf these days, so I sort of need it as well. It's the only way I get to hear everything. But I think it's people that haven't tried it should. You know, if you can get a great CD mix in your ears, there's nothing better. You need very good quality, obviously, as a bass player, because you need the bottom end happening in there. But if you go and get the best, you'll be pretty happy. You do have to get used to it, but you'll never go back. I've been using them for over 20 years, so I love them.
In-ear monitors are one of those things. They're designed to work with both of them in.
They are the design, but whatever's comfortable for people. I know a guitarist I used to work with was one in, one out, but his reasoning was that the only thing he ever had in his ear was his own vocal. So that's all he ever had in his ear. He wanted everything else normal. So he just had his little vocal, just his own little vocal there, and he was happy with it.
You do a lot of singing. Did you always sing? Did you sing from when you were in school?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, pretty much straight away. Yeah.
And you sing great harmonies, and you know how to pick a harmony quite. I've seen you do it in the studio, and you're very good at it. Is that something that you found easy, or is that something you had to work at?
No, I just found it easy. I think I don't know why.
You obviously got really good ears.
Yeah, I think so. I've also got very good taste buds. I have. So it might be a little, I don't know. I actually worked out the KFC recipe with my taste buds.
And
I can make
and what did you do with that?
I make KFC. It's called Kirky fried chicken. Oh. And it's very popular. But it's exactly the same. I'm not kidding.
Very popular.
And there's not 11 herbs, there's about 6. You can't count salt, pepper, you can't count. I'll give it to you one day.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, but I can, yes. And I'm not really... I did get some lessons from Russell Morris, who's probably one of the best in the business, and Russell did teach me how to use diaphragms and stuff. And, which, it's just, all it really does is, I guess you're able to not breathe as much because you're using it properly, and you've got a lot more power. You can really project a lot when you use your diaphragm. Oh. You would know all of that too, I'm sure.
It's one of the things that I probably should have had lessons in, but I never ever did. I was just really lucky, I think.
I don't think you need a lot. I think you just need a bit of a guidance, and then the rest is up to you.
I think I probably would have benefited greatly. But luckily, and this is the strangest thing too, going back, playing through the 80s, playing in loud bands with loud guitars, loud drums, the fallback monitoring not necessarily being loud enough. You have to be able to
battle it out,
belt out a tune, and it really is. You have to be able to sing quite loudly. I've been fortunate enough that I haven't done any damage to my voice, but I know of quite a few people who do damage because they're possibly not using correct technique.
Yeah, definitely. If you use your throats and things, you won't last the whole night. You just won't.
So you move up to the Gold Coast.
Yep. I didn't know anybody, really. So I met a few people and immediately just started playing with as many people as I could. So I realised then that they weren't all that good. So I just started my own band, and I sort of picked and chose players from bands that I was playing with and put together that band in it was about 4 years after I'd arrived that it really got going, and it's still going today. So that's been going for 20 years, that cover band up here. It's the longest band I've ever been in.
Wow.
But it's still going today, and there's two of us from the original lineup, the singer and myself, so that's incredible. I think they have a 20-year association in a cover band, but
That's great.
We're still going. Yeah.
And you're still good mates?
And we're still great mates, yeah. He's a big Maori boy, and he's a wonderful, they can sing anything. They just can. Fantastic. They're wonderful, wonderful people.
Oh.
So, I'm going to tell you another story.
Another story?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you another one. They're just going back to that Countdown Awards thing. I just remember another little story that I wanted to throw in.
Okay,
So we might be able to edit this later because it's probably going to have nothing to do with what we we're just talking about. But when we're talking about the animosity amongst bands back then, I started wearing hats. As everybody knows, I wear a hat on stage. And it became a Western hat after I got into the countries in the 90s. But back in the 80s, it was an Akubra.
Okay.
And I bought an Akubra one day at Flinders Street Railway Station, and I just loved it and wore it. Started wearing it in film clips, and back in those days, Hey Hey It's Saturday, Countdown, and a lot of television. In fact, I've kept all the lanyards. I've got 93 Channel 9 lanyards, so that shows you how many times we were on bloody Hey Hey or whatever it was. But anyway, Akubra rang our management and said, "This bloke in your band wearing hats, what size is he?" And they sent me 2 massive boxes full of assorted hats. So it wasn't a sponsorship as such, never happened to get after that, but yeah, they gave me all these hats. So I started throwing them out. You know, you throw your pick out or something, and I was throwing hats out. In the end, I had that many of them. I wish I hadn't have done that, but anyway.
Because they're worth quite a bit.
Oh yeah,
they're not cheap.
But then here comes the countdown. Now, this is, by the way, just to put this into perspective, those people who may remember a fellow called Greg Norman, who was a wonderful golfer, obviously, Australian golfer, also started wearing Akubra hats. I was wearing them before him, I can tell you. Anyway, to go back to this thing at the Entertainment Centre in Melbourne, at the Countdown Music Awards, I think it was 85 or 86, around about that time. Here we are, we all walk in, I've got me Akubra on. Here's In Excess, right? All of them have got an Akubra on. And I thought, what's that all about? Anyway, I just thought that was just, again, a little bit of the animosity that was going on. But anyway, it was just strange. I thought,
They're stealing your thunder.
yeah, I felt that, you know, I really did. So where's that come from? You never worn a hat before, you know. Anyway.
What do you want, the bass?
No, I'm taking the bass because it's...
You're taking the bass?
This is the first song I learnt. And we played this in the garage.
The first song you ever learned? All right.
And it's 4 chords. You ready?
Oh, you can... Oh, hang on.
We can just do acoustic, it doesn't matter. We don't
Are
need
you sure?
Yeah, yeah.
I can get you a lead.
You're going to love this, you ready?
I'll have a lead here somewhere.
It's in G, and it goes like this, ready?
All right, well, let's do this. Turn towards the camera. There we go.
Now the technique there, the important technique there is to make sure you're dead in the string before you go to the next one. That's just... That's it. And that song went for about 3 minutes, and people loved it. I'm not kidding. There you go.
What is your favourite bass?
Do you know what? I have one of these, and it probably is my favourite bass, only because it's the only one I can actually work on myself. Because it's easy to adjust and stuff, I find. I have a 5-string and a 4-string, and they're probably both my go-to basses, actually.
Because you've got a couple of vintage basses.
I do. I have a beautiful couple of vintage basses, actually. A lovely old Jazz, a lovely old Precision. And they're sort of too beautiful that I don't bring them out all that much anymore. Yeah, I record with the Precision a bit, but I don't use them that much out on the road because I worry about them a little bit. Did
you buy them from like way back when, or they were later acquisitions?
No, way back when, yeah. No, well, not brand new, but yeah, they weren't very old when I bought them, yeah. But yeah, that was over 50 years ago, yep. So give you an idea.
So you still got the first bass you ever bought?
No, I wish I did. No.
What happened to that?
I sold it. Silly. I sold the 2 first basses I ever bought, actually, when I came up here. So probably 20 odd years ago, I sold them both, only because I needed the money, which was just crazy. I know, it's horrible.
That makes
horrible,
perfect sense, actually.
But I did.
I think that would be a
both.
similar story to a lot of musos who...
When you're moving state and you're brand new and you don't know nothing, you need some money. So I did. I sold an old 57 Precision.
Wow.
And a 76 Music Man.
Did you get good money for them?
Nope. Not compared to what they're worth now.
Well,
no,
no,
definitely not, no.
I do remember when I was 19 or so, having the opportunity to buy a 56 gold top Les Paul for $800. And back then, as far as I can tell, that's what they were worth. The whole collectible thing hadn't really taken off yet. But it's certainly, in the meantime, if you think back and go, if only I'd bought that $800 guitar, that'd be worth, geez, 150 grand now?
It's a horrible thought. I know my old
It's strange, the decisions that you make.
Well, you just do, you regret them. And now I've got quite a lot of instruments now that I've accumulated that I won't sell anymore. That's it.
Do you ever think about the concept of retiring?
No. I bought another counter question there is, when's the last time you bought a brand new guitar?
Oh.
2 years ago. So no, I've got no intention, none whatsoever of stopping until I can't anymore. Yeah.
How do you find it? No problems with...
I've had some problems. I don't know. We probably all have had, but I've just been able to overcome them. And I just have. I've just overcome them and I'm fine. They are a heavy bugger of a thing. Oh. So you do have a little bit of arthritic stuff going on in the left shoulder, obviously, after years of... That's what I've been told anyway, years of having that thing on your shoulder. So that's interesting because basses are a little bit heavier than... Probably other than your Les Paul. They're pretty much heavier than anything else, realistically.
How do you counteract that? Is the a wider strap?
Yeah, wider straps and a bit of padding, always helps. Good quality leather, something that doesn't rip or dig into you, They're important, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're very, very
They're all
important.
considerations.
Comfort on stage is very important.
It is. It is very important.
But yes, those sorts of little problems, to the point where I was actually numb in the left arm for a few days. Couldn't even move a finger. But that was a worry.
Yeah.
But it quickly dissipated a bit and back again. But
Did you seek medical advice?
Immediately.
And what were you told?
Well, after weeks of scanning, it's sort of just nothing in the end. There was no reasoning behind it. Arthritis, but there's some nerve trapped in here, or it was very complicating. They didn't really have an answer, and they certainly didn't fix it.
Okay.
But it just seems to be something either I've worked to live with, and I don't notice it anymore. Taught myself how to play numb.
Is it a consideration now, if you're looking at a bass, that you try and aim for, or pick a lighter?
I only use...
Because there are options to
if
have
I'm
a lighter bass.
If I'm rehearsing, I'll use the lightest bass I've got. So I just alternate on stage with what I want to use, and it's the only time you'll see it, if it's a heavy thing. Yeah.
Does it change the sound of a bass if it's light or whether the timber's heavy or light?
Yeah, it does. That's probably why you go to those other instruments.
Do you find a heavier bass sounds
in some
better?
Yeah, I think so. I think, for example, I like the sound of a Precision better than a Jazz. A lot of people prefer it the other way around. But
Jazz has a smaller neck.
Yeah, it's a much lighter.
So is that an easier to
rehearsal
play?
Specialist, that one. Yes, yeah, definitely, because it's just a breeze. They're light. Especially my old one, it weighs nothing, and it's just beautiful. But on stage, it doesn't have the oomph, I find, of the heavier.
Okay, so
turn it up a bit more, and
it's got a bit more punch.
The heavier ones do. The Precision certainly is punchier than the Jazz.
What size strings do you use?
105 up top, 45 usually down the bottom. I've gone as high as 110s. On a 5-string, I'll probably go as high as a 130 up the top. But I like about a 40 to 45 G string.
Is that a light gauge or a medium?
It's probably medium.
Medium?
Yeah, it's probably medium. 105 to 45, usually medium.
Does that change the size of the string? Does that change the tone for you, or What does it do? Is just the feel?
Yeah, it's only the feel. It doesn't really change the tone. It certainly changes the tension on the neck to the point where I guess they're less flexible. I think the heavier gauges, they're probably more solid, but they're less flexible. They're not as, can't bend them as much, or they're not that good for slap, for instance.
Oh, okay.
So the lighter the gauge, the better for slap.
For slap?
Medium seems to just cover all angles, though. You know, you're sort of best of both worlds. Not ideal in either. But
Did you ever use flat wound strings?
I use flat wound on every fretless.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely, only.
Only flat wounds?
Well, yeah, because firstly, that's what a double bass is. Secondly, with no frets on your board, if you're using round wounds, your wood ain't going to last very long. I can guarantee you.
Oh, so because the string would dig into the
Rip
wood?
the shit out of it. Oh. I've had them that have done that, and obviously flat wounds don't. They're just totally different.
And they're a different sound.
They are. They're a woolly sound, a bit woollier, and probably what a fretless should sound like, I think.
Yeah.
And the rest should just be effects, if you want any brightness, you know.
There's been some great songs over the years that have had fretless bass. I'm trying to think of...
Pino Palladino is one man bass player that comes to mind. He used to work with a fellow called Paul Young.
Yeah, there's that Paul Young song.
That's the one. Wherever
I lay my hat.
That's Pino Palladino, yeah.
And that's a wonderful fretless bass sound on that.
Yep. Yeah, it is beautiful, in fact.
How do you find the fretting and getting the intonation and the note right on a fretless bass? Is that just a matter of practice?
No, I find it's a lot. Well, I find it easier in a way because it's all by ear. It really, a neck's something you don't really look at on a fretless instrument because it doesn't mean anything. I know there's some dots and stuff, but you can just feel it. I think on a fretless, you just know where you are. It's like a double bass. You can just feel it. You know, you can just know where you are.
Just having a great ear.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I think it's more about where you just place your hand so you can, and you know where to go to next without sort of concentrating on it.
There obviously needs to be a level of familiarity.
Yeah, definitely. Have to be familiar with, I think, the board, obviously, where your hand goes, and then you can just sort of do it automatically, I think. And the good thing about a fretless, if you're slightly off, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Okay.
Because they just add something in a way, so you can sort of be a little bit sloppy without being too sloppy, but get away with it, almost sort of fretless, and make it interesting. But I can tell you, someone like Pino enhanced it with a thing called the octave, which, you know, I can't master quite that exact same tone.
Oh,
Yet I've got exactly the same one, and I just can't get his sound. But it's incredible. It's just so very good.
Yeah.
I love that octave sound on a fretless.
Okay. What things do you do to look after your health?
Jeez, all the wrong things. Yeah.
Was there ever thought about that when you were younger?
Nah, never. No, not really. You just abused yourself, really. And, you know, we had partied hard. Geez, in the 80s. Anybody.
Yeah.
It was in a band in the 80s. Really, really.
There was massive drink riders and...
Massive, yeah.
Everything was free and available.
Free and available. We were driven around everywhere. We didn't have to drive. We didn't have to do anything. Just enjoy and party and perform. So, yeah, we have no inclination of how to look after each other. No.
Is that something that you would do differently with the knowledge you have now?
I wouldn't be a teetotaler, but I certainly wouldn't have gone to the excesses and some regretful things that you do in those circumstances, in that frame of mind too, you know, that come to mind. That you perhaps were better off not indulging as hard and handling the situation better, you know. Is
there any sort of fitness regime that you do now?
I used to run a lot, purely because of playing sport as a kid forever, and even now I still do probably about 80 kilometres a week of walking.
So you obviously do look after yourself?
I go for a walk and I listen to music and just walk around streets, and I enjoy it.
What other things do you do to earn an income besides music?
Well, I am an accountant by trade.
Okay.
So I am not a chartered accountant because GST was introduced since I got my diploma, so I would have had to have gone back and sort of recredit myself, if you like. So although It's only a piece of paper. At the end of the day, I'll still do that whenever I want for anybody that I can.
So that's another source of income for you?
I guess so, yeah.
So pretty much other than that, though, would you say that predominantly it's all been music?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
It's all been music.
It's interesting, I find music if you look over a long period of time, it does go in cycles. And most things in life, I think, like fashion, goes in cycles. And it's generally going back to being Uncanny X-Men being a punk band. It's been a while since we've had a punk revival. Mm-hmm. I'd be very curious to see what that would look like in this day and age. But it's always been at one of those points where music seems to get too refined, it gets too perfect. And there's a kickback against that. And it becomes, and that's generally a punk movement.
You don't really...
People rebel against the perfectness of the music.
You don't hear anything that's not perfect anymore, in a way.
Well, that's why I think that's the...
You don't hear Rolling Stones type of record, do you? Where there's the odd bum note here and there. That doesn't happen anymore.
I'm just wondering if the punk movement is the next thing that's going to come back.
That's very interesting. I reckon there's something in that, Scotty.
There's some young bands getting around that have got a very...
I was thinking about getting a couple of those tattoo stick-on things, and you and I get up there and do a bit of punk rock. You can take the hat off here, and go bang. Yeah, that's a good point. I think there would be a market there. I really do.
We should do a punk band.
I really think that's not a bad idea. I'll tell you someone who'd love to do that is Brian Mannix. He'd love to do that.
Oh, really? Well, we'll have to have words about that then.
He'd love to do that.
We'll have to have words about
Brian,
that.
I'm sure he would.
Oh. Well, I've got to say, it's been a marvellous pleasure to speak with you today.
It always is, Scotty.
It's great doing these podcasts. I always get to learn something about people that I didn't know.
Oh, look, I just talked a whole lot of crap through the whole thing. But in saying all of that, it's always wonderful to be with you, Scotty. Always look forward to seeing you. Always look forward to playing with you whenever I can too, mate. I love it.
Oh, thank you very, very much. Thanks, man.
Thank you so much
appreciated.
Again, mate. Cheers.
I'll put links down below for the things that Kirky's done in the past and some of the things he's up to now, if anybody wants to go and have a look at that. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.